In Rockford, Illinois, Bing Liu, Kiera Johnson, and Zach Mulligan bond over their passion for skateboarding. But as they grow up, their past connects them even deeper than the sport can. In the 2018 documentary Minding the Gap, I'm Austin Johnson.
And I'm Adam Johnson.
And this is Filmgazm. Welcome back to our top 10 films of the 2010 series with my number 6, Minding the Gap, a documentary directed by Bing Liu. This film was nominated for Best Documentary at the 91st Academy Awards. Pretty cool. And I remember it had this wave of excitement kind of around it. Different, podcast and critics and whatnot were like, oh my God, look out for this one. This is a total gut punch. Came out on Hulu. Got another wave of people that were like, holy hell, this is, not only is it about skateboarding, but it's kind of about life, about everything. And it's like an hour and a half. So I'm really happy to have my older brother with me here to talk about this just mind-boggling documentary.
Yeah, no, excited to be here. I mean, obviously, it's going to lead to a discussion of a bunch of other docs that we have kind of shared and watched over the years. But this one, so this is the second time I had seen it. I'd watched it when it came out, shortly after it came out, in time for the Academy Awards that year. But this is only the second time I've seen it, and yeah, it's pretty heartbreaking, obviously for most of it, but also like it shows a little bit of like kind of the human spirit and triumph of that, and in some cases, and it makes you feel for characters that you would, like just would never encounter, or maybe even if you would encounter, it's like that I would have never even thought about, in a town of Rockford, Illinois, that I just, I've not been to, even though despite going to Chicago multiple times and living in St. Louis for a while, like anytime you can get like a focused thing like this with characters as compelling as the ones in this documentary, it's going to be a fascinating story. And I thought this was one for that.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, you mentioned kind of at the beginning there, documentaries like we both care about them a lot, and because we both love sports, and through sports I think we both started to care about geography and history and just kind of the landscape of these things. So we are going to do kind of a documentary project here in a little bit, but also I think one of the reasons it's just you and I on this episode is you had chosen OJ Made in America on this list, now a few months ago when we did the initial top 10s with me, you, and Connor. And you had OJ Made in America as your number 7. So that one's really tricky because it's like 5 hours, and there's like always a debate about, is it a docu-series or is it a movie, because it was divided into parts back when it came out in 2016. But it felt right to have you on to talk about a doc, because you also had one in your top 10. And my God, is OJ Made in America, just something special.
Yeah. So OJ Made in America is 467 minutes. So
there you go. Okay.
Yeah, very, very long. So what is that? That's 7.5 hours. Yeah.
I thought it was 5. Yeah. I was
So it was released in 10 parts on a TV on ESPN. And yeah, obviously, interesting that we both chose sports documentaries. I mean, but obviously OJ Made in America touches on a lot more than just sports.
Yeah.
And it is hard to categorize because it was released episodically on ESPN, but then it did win the Oscar for best feature. So it was kind of like, and I was so moved by it. It's like, I felt like, okay, if we're going to count it as a movie, like the Academy Awards did, then I'm going to, pick it for my top 10. So yeah, that's why it was. So yeah, we're going to kind of, talk about it in tandem with, the focus being on Minding the Gap, because it's like a lot more digestible than it's an hour and a half. So it's like a lot more digestible than OJ Made in America. But no, we're certainly have a small OJ Made in America section here in a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's undoubtedly the best documentary of the decade. it just, like you said, it just covers so much ground through this kind of monumental moment in the 90s. So yeah, it's incredible. If you haven't seen it, highly suggest it. I mean, good Lord, Godspeed and good luck. But definitely give it a go. So before we get into the whole doc thing, I have kind of a more personal question, and you don't have to totally answer it by giving out names or anything, but you can kind of work your way around it. So you have been coaching basketball for over a decade. When you watch something like Minding the Gap or one of these kind of like, oh man, just like the human life is so interesting when you really look at it. Has there been a group of kids that you've coached or maybe a couple kids you've coached, gotten close to, that you could see a documentary being made about?
I mean, yeah, 100%. Yeah, I won't. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I won't name names, and there were specifically in this documentary. There's 3 or 4 kids that I've coached that reminded me. One a lot of Kier, and one a little bit of Bing. The kid that I maybe racially is not the same as Bing, but yeah, no, there's a kind of like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
A like love or a this like kind of like wide-eyed like optimism in the eyes of someone like Kier and a couple of the people I've coached that have had it a little bit rough, like certainly rougher than like you and I have had it in life, and that I just really kind of like was drawn to, and not in like a weird like white savior way, just like in just like a, hey, like this is somebody I could help like impact, like I'm not really gonna like save their lives or whatever. It's like, and maybe their lives don't need saving, but because I do think there's a risk in that with like someone who grew up like we did. Like we could watch these characters and be like, oh my gosh, like I want to go save them, and that's like a real problem with like a lot of the impetus behind adoptions. I was talking with a mom that I trained her daughter, and she has a younger son that's adopted from Ethiopia, and he's had some struggles adjusting and things like that, just like any kid would. And she's like, it's weirdly like fetishized in like the kind of American, like white American culture, like, oh, look at us, like we're diverse, we have this like adopted kid from Africa,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's I mean, obviously we're getting pretty deep here. That's a tricky thing, and there's a lot of, I think, particularly white people who kind of do this whole like, oh, like aren't we cool that we did this thing, and they don't understand how difficult it's going to be for both them and for the child. And obviously we have multiple adopted siblings that don't look exactly like us, and so we've seen kind of all sides of that. So yeah, I mean, I see a lot of people that I've come across, and they're all at the age. I mean, so the movie's shot over, is it a 12-year period that it was shot over?
Yeah, it's tough to really
Like
gauge.
10 to 12 years. Yeah.
Yeah, about a decade, right? Yeah, because Kier at one point is like 11.
Yeah. And those very
When
first.
when he's like breaking that kid's skateboard, he's like, "Is
Right.
this your fucking board?" Yeah,
Yeah.
and obviously he's like 20, 21 when he moves to Denver at the end of the movie. So yeah, it's got to be about.
But at one point, Zach is like 27.
Yeah.
So
Well, Bing is the oldest, then Zach, then Kier, and Kier's like quite a bit younger than that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, so no, I've seen in all 3 of them, there's different things. I mean, Zach is just, I mean, we'll get to him. Obviously, he's just a heartbreaking character, in so many regards. But so with Zach, I saw more family members than I saw kids I've coached.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Again,
interesting.
No names, but yeah.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. That's it was more about seeing just kind of like, obviously that question impacted you because it took you down a road of like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Of course, when you're around, youth, and you spend a lot of time around them, there's gonna be things that are like, wow, they're gonna open you up. Of course you're there to coach and teach them, but it ends up being the other way around most of the time, right? You get taught by them, and you're like, oh my gosh, I mean, these, there's certain kids that you're always going to have like your favorites because they're the ones that like taught you the most about being a person. So I figured that'd be an interesting one. And Mind of the Gap is so cool because it feels so organic. It's not like Bing had this crazy idea of, oh, I'm gonna pick apart these kids' lives and my own life. It just ended up that way. At first he's filming them skateboarding, and then as this kind of wild, scary thing happened where all of them dealt with abuse, and all of them kind of are, the sins of the fathers, right? Just like these things that get passed down. It's such an organic documentary. The way it unfolds, and by the end of it, yeah, you're kind of in tears. Like, wow, I really, how is this about, all of life? That one of my Letterboxd reviews for later, like, explains exactly how I feel about the movie. We'll do that later on, but yeah, man, documentaries, they just have a lot of power, and I've always held them in such a high esteem. I think a lot of people have a hard time comparing them to, feature films and stuff that's just written for the screen, but I have no problem comparing them. I have no problem putting Mind in the Gap in between Rango and Hereditary, on my top 10 list. I've always been that way. And Mind in the Gap is easily my personal favorite doc, probably right next to Hoop Dreams. Those are the ones that just feel like they've taught me the most and that's just my thing. But you and I care a lot about this stuff, and I think we can kind of track it back to a certain point, at least for our lifetime. Hoop Dreams, I mentioned, that came out in 1994. I was not born. You were 4 years old. Like, come on, we weren't there for that wave, but we were here for a little thing called 30 for 30. And both of us at that time had already become Bill Simmons fans, right? The great Podfather over at Grantland, The Ringer, BS Report, all that stuff that he's done. I'd say probably the 30 for 30 stuff in the Book of Basketball were the things that I respected the most as I started to really learn about him. And these ESPN films, they like continued it, they still continue it. But that initial 30 for 30 in 2009 and 2010, where they were like, we're going to release 15 movies and then the next year 15 movies, and it's going to be 30 stories, about sports that people don't really know or people forgot about. And that opened me up completely, So I wanted to hear, because at the time I was 14 when those movies started, and you would have been 18, 19 when they started going. I just want to get like generally off that initial run, what were the ones that really like got you with that initial run of 30 for 30?
Yeah, well, and the idea behind it, so it was 30 films for 30 years of ESPN. So ESPN started in 1979.
So cool.
Yeah, 1979, and there was 30 different filmmakers too. So that was the big plan behind it.
That's actually one of the things people don't really realize.
Yeah. I mean, there's now been a few people who've done a couple, but like the first run, it was just 30 for 30, 30 different filmmakers, 30 films for 30 years of ESPN. And the goal was to focus on stories that weren't as told during their time. So it's not only stories about like the 85 Bears or the 96 Bulls or, stuff like that. It's like, some of them are like bigger, like people, like there's one about Jordan, but it's about his time with the White Sox, not necessarily, his time with the Bulls. So, that was like the impetus behind it. And yeah, so it's funny. So that started in 2009, that's when I started reading Simmons. So I knew him as like the sports guy in like ESPN, the magazine, but I never like really like read that all the time. I'm sure I read a few of the columns. But it was 2009. I had gotten into a soccer podcast because that was the year we like really like the soccer stuff like really took off for us in terms of like the love of that. It was kind of 2008, 2009 area. He was on a soccer podcast, and I was like, oh yeah, this is like the ESPN guy. And he was talking about like how he was like kind of starting to get into it, and he'd watch a little bit of the Barcelona games, and he was going to go to a USA Mexico qualifier. And I was like, oh, this guy like sounds pretty interesting. So I started listening to his podcast right then, which had been going for a couple of years. I went backwards and listened to all the ones he had done previously for the previous 2 years, and then started listening week in and week out. And then in November of that year, he released the Book of Basketball. Which I took to class. It was my first year of college, and I took it to class, and I would just like I wouldn't pay attention at all to like what was being taught. I was just reading the Book of Basketball in the room the entire time. And then that led into the 30 for 30s, which I think the first one was released in the fall of 2009. I'd have to like look that.
I think it was King's Ransom, the Gretzky one.
Yeah, about the Gretzky trade. Yeah.
Like this, I think it was one fateful day, like in 1988 or whatever, that changed everything.
Yeah. October 6th, 2009 was the first one.
Yeah.
So they ran from October 6th, 2009 to December 11th, 2010 was the first 30.
So yeah. Okay. About full year of releasing these movies.
So I had these up here. So to answer your question in a roundabout way, but that was a little more backstory. Of that first 31, I think King's Ransom is really good. And so Peter Berg directed that one. So obviously that's a pretty big. I mean, some of the names. So I'll just read some of the names of the directors. So Peter Berg, Barry Levinson, Mike Tolan, Kirk Fraser, Billy Corbin, Steve James. Laurie McCreary, Morgan Freeman was a producer on one. Ice Cube, Brett Morgan, Ron Shelton. I mean, these are pretty big time directors that have done. And Steve Nash was a director on one.
Into the Wind.
Into the Wind, yes, yeah.
Yeah, Into the Wind is great. Yeah,
and then John Singleton did the Marion Jones one.
Yeah, which like was a kind of a disappointment.
Yeah. I actually didn't like that one that much. Yeah.
That one's always looked at as one of the weaker of the original run. Yeah, but so great story.
It is a great story. Yeah. Also, I did a little research on Marion Jones's like very short-lived WNBA tenure. Crazy. So Without Bias was great. That's the one about Lynn Bias.
Oh, yeah. Oh man.
Dying. The first one, the original one. That was awesome.
Chills. Yeah.
Yeah. Winning Time, directed by Dan Cloris. Reggie Miller, New York Knicks. Love that one. Guru of Go is great.
Very sad
about the rotisserie. Place that the rotisserie fantasy baseball league is like the original kind of fantasy baseball league in 1980. Run Ricky Run, I thought was fascinating, about Ricky Williams.
Yep.
Straight Out LA. Okay, one of my very favorite ones, the whole run. Well, it has the two Escobars, which is like maybe the highest quality one they ever did. It's incredible. And that's the thing too. They let them be like varying in length. Like they're not all an hour, they're not all 2 hours. Like they kind of like let people tell the story how they wanted to tell it. So, June 17th, 1994. So it's a quick cut archival
Ooh,
that captures the various U.S. sporting events on the day in question and the emotions that generated. It included the opening of the World Cup soccer tournament in the USA, the Knicks versus Rockets NBA Finals. I think it's Game 5. Arnold Palmer's last round in the U.S. Open, and the New York Rangers Stanley Cup victory parade. One event, however, overshadows them all: the OJ Simpson Bronco chase from the police. So that was all taking place in the same time, and so it cuts back and forth. It's really cleverly done. I watched it again about a year ago. Really, really good. Really like that one. And I
yeah,
think you watched The Birth
yeah.
of Big Air recently, right?
Oh yeah, I've been on like a tear of rewatching ones that I haven't seen in a long time. Yeah, The
Yeah.
Birth of Big Air. Yeah, Matt Hoffman. That one's real short, but this is like one of my favorite things about 30 for 30 is like, of course you can name like all, football, basketball, baseball, but the fact that they took like a BMX, it's like insane, like just
Yep.
daredevil that like was willing to put his body on the line. And that one I believe is directed by Jeff Tremaine, which is the Jackass guy.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
insane, like insane. And that, of course, they get Tony Hawk and like Johnny Knoxville produced. They get all these different people. Dave Mira, rest in peace. All these people that got to talk about Matt Hoffman and his input on the history of BMX, just biking in general. So yeah, I mean that's part of why I love it. Is it taught me stuff when I was 14, 15, 16 years old that I knew nothing about. A silly little game. Talk about relating to a bunch of nerds that just want to have fun, talking about baseball all day. So, I mean, yeah, I love these so much. Two Escobars is that one and Once Brothers are the two
Yeah, I was
that,
just about to say Once Brothers is another excellent one in that first run. Yeah.
because Once Brothers is how I found out about Yugoslavia.
So, okay, so Once
So,
Brothers is the story of Croatian Drazen Petrovic and Serbian Vlade Divac, NBA players and Yugoslavian national team teammates, and how upheaval in their homeland adversely affected their friendship.
yeah, I mean, I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what Yugoslavia was when I was 15. I didn't know, you know what I'm saying? Like that's a big deal to learn about that. Not through school, because again, I wasn't paying attention. I was also reading whatever I could get my hands on that wasn't you know uh, math and literature that was presented to me at school. I was like, oh, let me watch. Read. Like you said, Bill Simmons or whatever. Whatever sports thing I could read, and that's huge. That's huge. That 30 for 30 was teaching me about geography and history and this crazy nasty war that took place, and then opens a whole floodgate of, oh my God, there was a lot happening in the late 80s, early 90s in Europe. There's a lot going on. So
Yep.
That's a big deal. And now in hindsight, I mean, I watch Drazen Petrovic highlights all the time. Like I'm totally obsessed with the guy. I still have this shirt that I've had for a decade now that I wear all the time. I just feel like a weird connection to him, So
Well, and now the best player in the NBA is Serbian. So
yeah, it's great. It's really cool how it's affected. Like that's the team that gave Dream Team like any sort of like competition. Even they lost by 40. Croatia, 1992. And like Drazen was like trying to like give it to MJ, like so cool. It's such like a cool thing. And now the Europeans might beat us in the World Cup this summer.
Yep.
So that's the full circle thing. I rewatched 4 Days in October recently. So sick. That one's great.
Yep.
Just
That's my first round. Yeah.
That's just an unbelievable series. 2004. The Red Sox are down 3-0. Jordan rides the bus is fascinating. I mean, yeah, you can go on and on. I'll watch any of these. No crossover. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love these so much. That initial run is so special to me.
So I wanted to get into a little bit like why sports documentaries, because like our brother Jeremy and I, we're starting a series that's going to be on Filmgazm here relatively soon about sports movies, so like scripted movies. And they're fun and I enjoy them, but for the most part, I would way rather watch a sports documentary than a sports movie, because I just think sports stories and like these real life stories are just way more interesting than like a fictionalized version of stuff where it's like, where you can write this ending of like the team's down by 5 with whatever minutes left and they came back and won and crazy. It's like, but there's crazier things that happen in sports all the time, and those stories kind of like are more interesting to me than the ones that are just like written by somebody. And there's this famous line. So 2010 World Cup, USA and Algeria are playing. USA is trying to get out of the group. They have to win the game.
Classic.
Late in the game, and Landon Donovan ends up scoring. There's a great call from Ian Dark. Go USA. Oh, it's incredible. And then he has this line where he said, "You could not write a script like this." And he's like, I mean, first of all, like if you were to write a script, that is kind of like what you do. Like the team scores in the last second, and it's like, but that's the point. Is like real life is just like so much better than a scripted version. Like when things like that happen, that are just like, oh, that was so crazy. It's this replayed moment over and over and over. It's there's all those videos of bars going crazy all across America as Donovan scores, and I was in one of those bars when that happened. That's just like so much more interesting. And so to tell those true stories, I just find a lot more fascinating than kind of like these scripted versions of sports movies. But and even especially when it's like a sports movie about a true story, I was like, I'd rather just see the deep dive documentary of this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Very, very rarely am I like totally satisfied by a sports movie, which is why it's great when it happens. Like when Moneyball happens, you're like, fuck yeah,
Or like Miracle. Like I think Miracle's good.
Miracle is awesome. When it comes to sports movies, it's really good. Just as a movie, it's pretty good, but as a sports movie, it's almost great.
But I have to find the name of it. So there's one of the 30 for 30s. It's like in one of the later series about the Russian team. Here it is. Of Miracles in Men. I think that one's fascinating. So an exploration of the miracle on ice from the viewpoint of the defeated Soviet Union team. The film features defenseman Fedosov returning to Lake Placid to recollect his team's defeat. That one is so good. That was released in 2015. I like a story like that. I think is absolutely fascinating. Like, okay, like we know the story from an American side of like, oh yeah,
Mike Ruzioni.
Yeah. Do you believe in miracles? Yes. But like, what about the favorites? What about the team that had won, however many games in a row and were the absolute best team in the world? I think stories like that are really interesting. That would not have been that interesting as a scripted drama, but as a documentary, it's fantastic.
Correct. And I think a big part for you and I, being like such huge sports fans, is it's so much cooler to watch footage of Carlos Valderrama passing the ball to Andres Escobar than like two actors.
Yeah.
passing the ball, which is what, we're going to bring up The Last Dance later, because that's kind of like the culmination is like, wow, look at this thing that just, when COVID hit, it captured the world by storm. But the footage, just the sheer amount of like in-game footage and locker room and all that stuff is just like, holy shit. Well, one of my favorite quotes from one of these 30 for 30s is in 4 Days in October. It's Spike Lee, and he's at Yankee Stadium. I think it's before Game 6. And they're talking to him. They're like, "Are you nervous?" He's like, "Hell yeah, I'm nervous." Like, he's like, "Look, I make movies. There's only so far I can go." He's like, "Sports is always better than movies because you literally don't write this stuff."
You have no idea. Yeah.
He's like, and you know what? Like, if I'm watching the first ever 3-0 comeback in a huge series between the biggest rivals in baseball history, he's like, I'm all for it. Even though I'm a Yankee fan, like I'm all for like just witness the insane, And I thought that was so cool that Spike Lee, one of our great American directors, has always stood behind. This is why I go to sporting events. This is why I go to MSG over and over and get my heart broken, is because you just can't write it. I don't know what's going to happen. For Knicks fans, you kind of know what's going to happen, but you don't really know until it unfolds, or how it's going to unfold, or what's point A to point B, what's the journey to get there, So, I mean, just this past year in the NBA, the fact that the fucking Miami Heat went to the finals was this. I mean, at the beginning of the year, no one was like, oh yeah, for sure they're gonna beat the Bucks and the Celtics and go to the finals. No one was really saying that, so that's why we do it. It's like for the unfolding, it's for that stuff. So documentaries are always, when they capture that unfolding and how it happens, is always way more valuable to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's the type of thing like the 3-0 comeback, the Yankees and Red Sox in 04. It'd be the type of thing that like a scriptwriter would bring and be like, it's a little too unrealistic, like
correct.
Yeah. But that's why it's so cool, is that like we had no idea that was going to happen, It's only history until someone makes it. I think that's part of it. Well, I mean, do you want to get into Last Dance now? Because there's a reason. I mean, you kind of hit on it a little bit, why I like that so much, that I don't think it's why everyone else likes it so much. I mean, everybody loves the whole like the memes and the Jordan being the arrogant guy. It's like no. It like telling the story of his career. I mean, this is going to sound like we're coming from like a position of like we really know a lot about this guy. Like I've been researching Michael Jordan since I was 5 years old. I got to see him play for the Bulls. I got to see him play for the Wizards. Like I was very lucky. But like I just wanted to see the unseen footage, because like the telling the story of his career, I know all that. Like that's it's cool to see the highlights, and it's great. I'm always going to enjoy watching Michael Jordan highlights, but like the 97, 98, and that was the one part where I was like, man, I would have just watched just more of that. I want to see everything they have, all the footage they have from the 97, 98 season that we had not seen before. So those parts of it, and I rewatched it a couple of years ago. So I watched it when it came out, and I watched it again a year later. like in like 2 sittings,
Yeah, I remember you doing that. Yeah.
over 2 nights. And it was like, okay, I just could not get enough of the 97, 98 footage of just like being in a team, like on a plane, on a bus, like with them in a hotel. Like that was just absolutely fascinating to me. Whereas like, oh, here's the story of this playoff series. Again, it's like, I've seen these games. I know these games. But I think for people who maybe don't know as much of that, both parts were really cool, and that's awesome. That's why that documentary was so successful. I mean, that is, you got to say, the most successful sports documentary, I mean, possibly ever.
I think it is. Yeah, because it came at the perfect time. COVID, everybody was sitting at home.
Yep.
And he is one of the people that he's so intoxicating for some, mostly for like wrong reasons. He's completely arrogant, just kind of a monster in some senses, but it's so hard to not watch, like for me, I'm with you. For me, like my favorite moment of that entire documentary,
I know exactly
is when what is it?
The bird thing.
Yes, when they beat the Pacers and Bird's like, you motherfucker.
Yeah. And Jordan leans in and just goes, fuck you, you bitch. Yeah.
It's so sick. Yeah, like that's why I got so jazzed about watching that. I rewatched that episode not that long ago because I just want to see that. I wanted to see that moment. I mean, it's so incredible, just that stuff. Or like swinging the baseball bat while smoking a cigar before a game.
Yeah.
And he's just like, like, I'm just gonna fucking kick their ass. Like that's the stuff that's like, yeah, really and like Luke Longley's like, Jesus.
Yeah.
It's just, these like different characters and whatnot. Or the whole bus scene that I think a lot of people really liked, where like the pettiness of Jordan, like
yes,
all of that stuff was really fascinating. So yeah, I'm with you. Like the in-game stuff, really cool. And the kind of like storytelling of like, oh, Rodman liked to go out and drink. Yeah, no shit. We all know that. I guess not all, but sports fans know that stuff. But
well, definitely not all. Definitely not all, because I interviewed a player who was playing on the Bulls at the time of like the Last Dance, or he had just finished playing for the Bulls, and he like didn't know a lot of like he didn't even realize that like the Jordan championships were split in 2. Like he thought it was just like, oh, they just won 6 in a row. Like he like wasn't. And he played on the Bulls. I mean, it was like that's. Yeah, so I think a lot of players, they don't really like, people don't actually research stuff. Like people don't go in the backwards. Like we're weird. We are the weird ones because we go back.
Yeah,
all the time.
And I'm quite okay with that.
Me too. Me too. Yeah.
I actually, I love it. Another great quote from one of the 30 for 30s and silly little game. I think his name's Dan Okrent. He's like, you'll love this. He's talking about, because he's the one who like basically started he basically started fantasy baseball single-handedly, and therefore he started fantasy sports and like makes no money off of it. It's really sad. But he has this quote where he's like, yeah, by year 7, year 8 of doing everything by hand, like going through newspapers, looking at the box scores, he's like, I'm writing everything down for everybody's team. It was miserable. And then he pauses and he goes, no, it wasn't. I loved it. It's just like, I mean, he's like, it was a huge part of my life, like pre having a family and kind of like actually taking my career seriously. He's like, that was my life, was taking care of this league for everybody. And he never won. He never won the league himself. Like with all these other guys from the New England area, he always get like 3rd, 4th, 7th. But he's doing all of the work. And he's like, oh, it's miserable. And he's like, no, it wasn't.
It's not for him. It's like, for him, it's like a Sisyphusian task, right? It's like to most people, this would be like, man, when this is like pushing that rock, a boulder up the hill, over and over. But for him, it's like, this is a labor of love. Like, I love doing this. I love that I have this rock to push up the hill every single day, like that's so cool.
Yeah. And I feel the same way. Any like little project that like we do with our friends that's like sports related, I'm always just like, how involved can I be? Like, can I be the captain of this ship? Can I be the co-pilot? Like, I want to be as involved and as knowledgeable about what we are doing as anybody else that's doing it. And it's like my mind is occupied so much by what can I do with my sports fandom to make it even better, or make it even more fulfilling. So yeah, obviously this kind of stuff is great. But okay, so I want to run through some. You stop me when you want to talk about it. I have a feeling it'll be soon. So after 30 for 30 initially started, I'd say one of the documentaries that you and I both really enjoy is HBO's sports doc, Courtship of Rivals, Magic and Bird.
Yep.
Unreal.
Great.
Yeah, it's
just simple. It's simple. It's a story of Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, their rival. I mean, it's like not that like special of a like format or anything. It's just really good. It's 2 subjects who got to talk a lot about their friendship and rivalry, and it's just fantastic. Yeah, it's really, really good. Footage is great.
Yeah, footage is great. Jackie McMullen is gets a lot of interview time in it. A great kind of like piece to go with it is When the Game Was Ours, right? Written by her.
Yep. Great book.
Great, yeah, great stuff. Great doc, great book. Just two of the coolest athletes of all time. 2011. Have you seen McEnroe Borg Fire and Ice?
Yes.
Awesome. So good.
Yes.
Yeah. So good.
I watched it on a plane on the way to. I don't remember where I was going, but it was a long flight, and I watched it on a plane.
Yeah, that's another HBO one, really good. Another one from 2011 that we've done on Oscar Sunday on this show, so I wanted to shout it out, is a Oscar-winning documentary from 2011, Undefeated, which is about a football coach who's kind of like with some underprivileged kids. And it is just one of those mind-blowing, kind of like Mind in the Gap, Hoop Dreams, just like, wow. I mean, the power of just like listening to the youth, like listening to their problems, what they're going through, like what they want out of life is so cool. 2012, got two basketball ones, The Dream Team and Doing It in the Park. Both really cool for very different reasons. But The Dream Team is, remember how like big of a deal that was? Huge. That 20-year anniversary of the 1992 team, and the 2012 team was like, hey, we're just as good. Yeah. And like NBA TV released this really cool doc, and it had this unseen footage of them playing like Magic versus MJ, and Bird's on the sideline, like Bird's just kind of like laying there. Leitner is like, what the fuck am I doing here? It's Dream Team is a must see. I think it's one of the better sports docs of the past 10 years. Now 11 years.
Also had a book, not to be confused with Jack McMullen. Jack McCallum wrote a book about the Dream Team, and I read that as well. And he's interviewed quite a few times in the.
So did I.
Yeah.
Great book. Doing It in the Park is it's a change of pace, but it's just a fun one. If you love basketball, definitely check that one out. Shoes, street ball, just kind of like the culture of basketball. 2013, the class of 92. Great stuff. Great stuff. I forgot how that's already 10 years old.
I know, that's crazy, right?
I feel like I just watched that, but that's about Manchester United, this kind of just wave of talent they had. Who's your favorite of that group? Is it Giggsy?
As a player?
Yeah, both, I guess.
Well, that's tough. Okay, so it's Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs, Nicky Butt, David Beckham. Those are kind of the primary.
Yeah. I think Giggs, like both.
Am I forgetting?
I think it was just those.
Giggs is a very problematic person. That's why I'm like, I don't really want to say him, but he's an absolutely incredible player and like so fun to watch. Prime. Beckham is this weird, like, he's too well known for how good of a player he was, but sometimes that almost underrates how good of a player he was. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like
100%.
He was an awesome player, but he was not like one of the like very best in the world. Maybe for a very brief time he was, but he's so famous. I mean, he's one of the most famous soccer players, one of the most famous athletes ever. Like he really is. But he just like, he actually was never, I mean, like Luis Figo was like a definitely a better player, but he's like not as well known as
correct.
Beckham. But I guess Scholes, if I had to kind of answer like the combo of just kind of like personality plus like playing style and fun. I mean, Nicky Butt's the worst player of the four. Although he had a great career. I mean, he's just not. To have all four of those guys at the same time coming through is just insane.
That's the whole point of it, right? The whole point of that. Yeah. I think it's also the fact that it's 1982. It's like there's like a lot of things happening in English football. Like there's stuff's about
really started. Yeah.
Yes, stuff's about to change like rapidly, and so I think it's a great if you like soccer as a sport, if you like.
The Nevilles. There's six.
Oh, Gary. Yeah. Duh. Gary Neville was.
I knew there was. Yeah, I knew there's somebody else. Yeah, Gary and Phil Neville too. Yeah.
Okay, so it's six guys. Yeah.
So yeah, even crazier. Yeah, that's six. It's six. I mean, so four of them really played like the prime of their career at Manchester United. I mean, Beckham left and went to Real Madrid, but like became a world class player essentially. At their. I think
the era is like leading up to that 99 team, right? Is like 7 years later they achieve like what football teams set out to achieve.
Yeah.
Winning everything. So that one's awesome. Another random one. It's about, I don't know if you've seen this one. It's called 12 O'Clock Boys.
No.
You seen that? Mm-hmm. It's about a young kid. I want to say in Baltimore. I watched this a few years back. It was on Criterion, and it's about a kid who's trying to get into a dirt bike gang. Like you've seen videos of those guys who just pop like wheelies and just like fly through the streets in different areas. And the cops are like, we can't chase them out of fear for, I mean, just the way they're riding is so insane. Like these pedestrians are going to be in trouble if like we chase them because they're on bikes. So they just like let them go. They're just like fuck it. And this little kid, I think his name's Pug. He's like 11, and he's like, I'm gonna be one of the 12 o'clock boys. I'm gonna be in that gang. And it's about dirt biking. Ultimately, it's like who has the coolest bike. It's really really good. And then Lenny Cook, unbelievable doc directed by the Safdie brothers. Really really sad. Like one of the ultimate what if. 30 for 30 has a lot of what if documentaries, and Lenny Cook is definitely kind of like that. This guy was kind of compared, like he was like right before LeBron and Melo and those guys in the basketball world, like high school basketball, like, oh my God, look out for this guy, 2001, 2002. And he just like fucked around and completely got lost. It reminds me of that book, Play Their Hearts Out, which is just like an incredible book about a lot of guys that just kind of got lost in like this, basically lost in the sauce. Just like, whoa, like AAU, being in magazines, doing this, doing that, going to these different camps, 100 different coaches yelling different things at them. And, like, oh, you have to be great. You have to do this. You have to do this. Like, you have to work hard. Just like never allowed to be a kid, And then when they become 21, they like don't know what they're doing, like they're completely lost. So that one's really tough. 2014, and of course I'm not naming the season 3, season 4 30 for 30s because they kept coming out. The Fab Five, Bad Boys, they kept coming, and they're like they're still so good.
They are. They changed it to like ESPN Films Presents, and then they just said, okay, hey, let's go back to the 30 for 30 branding, and so they have volume 2, volume 3. they have like multiple volumes, but
it has like the famous
9 for 9, the Title 9 series. 9 for 9.
Soccer Stories. That one, those are sick.
Those were all in the lead up to the 2014 World Cup, which is the last one that ESPN broadcasted.
So would that have been when Hillsborough came out?
Yeah, that's a soccer story. Yep.
To me, Hillsborough is like one of the 10 must-sees from the decade.
Hillsborough is amazing.
Yeah, for fuck's sake, open these gates. Like like the quotes you get out of it, the knowledge you get out of, oh my God, this is how it can go wrong. There's
8 soccer stories.
8 soccer stories. So
Hillsborough, Maradona 86. That's a short one. That's just like his play. The Opposition, which was about the military coup in Chile. Yeah, that was crazy. That's a crazy story. Ceasefire Massacre, which is about the Northern Ireland. The Bloody Sunday, essentially. That led to like a Northern Ireland, and it's a long story. Myth of Garincha. That's a really good one. Some of these are a little shorter. And then I love this one, obviously, because I'm a Tottenham fan, but White, Blue, and White. And it's after leading their national.
That one's great.
Yes, about Ozzy Ardiles and Ricky Villa. Ricky Villa and Ozzy Ardiles joined Tottenham after the '78 World Cup, after they won it for Argentina in Argentina. They're becoming cult heroes in England after leading Spurs to the 1981 FA Cup win. Things radically changed, however, when it conflicted. Ardiles leaves Spurs and returns to Buenos Aires after Argentine troops descend on British-ruled Falkland Islands, which are way out in South America, asserting sovereignty over the territory and resulting in the Falklands War. And the Falklands War also kind of hung over the 1986 World Cup, which is when England and Argentina met in the quarterfinals, and it's the Maradona, the incredible goal, and also the hand of God.
Hand of God,
So that's all kind of like a piece of each other. But that one's really fun to watch, like old Tottenham highlights. And at that time in English football, they weren't bringing in a lot of foreigners like they do now. So it was like unique to have a couple Argentinian players play for one of the bigger teams. So that was pretty cool. But that was in the lead up to the 2014 World Cup, and those are all really solid. Like really all worth.
Super good little series. They just like have these pockets of just gold, ESPN Films. So, well, I don't like always love ESPN, obviously, like especially some of the stuff they've been doing recently, but I do love. I'm a sucker for that. Dun dun dun. ESPN Films. ESPN Films presents. What if I told you? All that stuff's great.
Those shorts are all really good too.
Oh yeah, they can do like 10-minute things that are like, that just changed the way I think about baseball. It's awesome. 2014 and 2015, I got Iverson. Just fun little. If you like AI, it's a fun one. Minority of One, must see. HBO doc about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Just crazy stuff. Really, really cool footage too of Kareem, like listening to records and stuff. I mean, he's just a fascinating guy. And then Kobe Bryant's Muse on Showtime, which is a real interesting one, especially now. I rewatched this shortly after he passed away, and it's just one of those things where whatever you feel about him, you like watch him just speak about how much he cares about basketball, and you're like, wow, I don't care about anything as much as he does, with this sport. The way he talks about the the leather on the ball, the way he talks about just like feeling his jersey and like all these things that like this sweat coming down. He's paying attention to like every little detail. It's a really, really good doc. Like I'm not a crazy Kobe fan, but I do have admiration for, kind of what he does, what he is. There's also the one from I think 2008 called Kobe Doing Work. That's directed by Spike Lee. So that one's pretty good. He's all like torching the Spurs in that doc. So tough to take that because he's dicing up Manu Ginobili, but really cool because you're watching Kobe in action. 2016, we have The Drew, No Excuse, Just Produce, a fun little documentary about the Drew League. You got appearances from Kobe, from LeBron, Kevin Durant. It's really, really, really fun. The Blues, Another Story of France. That's a good one, which if you're looking for like an IMDb or whatever, it just says Le Bleu. So I don't know if you type in The Blues, Another Story of France, that's kind of like the English title, but that's about French football. And my God, do they have some history.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was on Netflix for a long time. Is it still?
I think so. I'm pretty sure it is.
It's more. It more focuses on like 98 and post 98.
Well, you've passed like 20 years essentially. So like 98 to 2016, whatever. And I mean, like some awesome players. And then 2016, of course, we've talked about it before. OJ Made in America came out. I believe it came out like in May. So I want to say I was like watching the finals, but also watching.
It was in June. Yeah.
It was in June. Okay. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. In because June was June 1994 was when all this stuff like really went down with OJ. Unbelievable. I mean, we talked about earlier at the beginning of the show, just an absolute must see. It's one of those things that you could teach a whole course about. You could have a whole
really, really good,
a whole class on that doc. I need to watch it again. I've never actually sat down and rewatched the whole thing again. I've seen like snippets here and there, but it's been 7 years. I might need to do that again.
Yeah, I haven't either. Yeah, I'm part of the length is a little bit scary. I mean, obviously that's it, and it's so heavy. I mean, the some of the themes, I mean, not the whole time, but like some of the themes are so heavy. So that's really good. Do you have more? I've got a couple that you probably have not said yet.
In 2016, that was all I had. What do you got?
Well, no, keep going. I'll go back.
No, I've got quite a few more. 2017, The Carter Effect, so awesome. If you like Vince Carter, it's just a fun one.
Simple. Yeah, not real. Like, I mean, it's not gonna blow you away or anything, but yeah.
2018. This is a murderer's row. I have some good ones here. Shut Up and Dribble, which is kind of in response to some like off the court stuff, and I think that one's on Showtime. Basketball Love Story. It's like fucking 20 hours of basketball stuff. There's one Romanian documentary called Infinite Football that I think is so fascinating. It's about this guy who comes up with a new idea for like how to play the sport. I mean, it's completely ridiculous, the idea, but he's so committed to it. And this documentarian from Romania is like, I'm going to follow like every little meeting he goes to. He even gets people out on a pitch to like try it out. And the players are like, what? Like, the hell is this? He wanted to kind of not speed things up, but make them like a little more efficient as far as like how positions are played. And it just wouldn't work in the modern era. Just no way. Let's see. Free Solo, which won the Oscar against Minding the Gap. It's about a guy, extreme sports, right? It's kind of a guy doing some rock climbing and kind of putting his body to the test. It is very good. And then the last one, Strokes of Genius. Awesome stuff.
Yes.
I love Strokes of Genius.
On mine. That's on mine. So that centers around, it's based on a book as well. That centers around the 2008 Wimbledon final between Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal. But it uses like each set, like they show kind of each highlights from each set. So it's a 5-setter, obviously. And it tells the story of like each guy and like how they got there and different things, like kind of between the highlights of each set. And obviously it gets to the end, and it's kind of like a passing of the torch of like, Rafa finally beating Roger, and then obviously Roger goes on to win a bunch more after that. But it's like kind of them at their kind of peak, and Strokes of Genius is awesome. Like I would highly recommend that, whether you're a tennis fan or not. It's just the structure of it is really cool. It's a really unique documentary. Yeah,
it's like two gods. The two, in my opinion, the two best at the sport, the two most kind of adaptable. They can kind of do everything, play on different surfaces. So it's like watching two like gods just collide, two titans. It's as close as you're going to get to like Greek mythology. It's like these two freak athletes like pounding a ball back and forth at each other. It's great. But 2018 Basketball Love Story. Obviously, clearly we're both huge basketball fans. That is just, I mean, what more can you ask for? You know, you got Ken Burns baseball, which is like awesome
Yes.
if you're a baseball fan.
That's
He also
pre
has
the time we were talking about, though.
oh yeah, way
Yeah.
before. And but yeah, this 2018. I remember when it came out, we both were like, what? Like,
Yeah.
is it really that much stuff? And it would like break it down episodically, so you didn't have to like go in order. You can kind of pick
Yep.
things that you want. But of course, you and I like went straight through and
Yep.
watched it all. Because
Yeah.
yeah,
Basically what it is it's like, I mean, I don't even know how many, 25 like different like kind of chapters
probably
about
yeah.
different topics. I mean, so there's one that's about like the beginning of the WNBA. There's one that's about like the European influence, like on the NBA, like through the eyes of like Tony Parker and Jokic, and you know what I mean, like different players, like that. There's some about college basketball. There's some about guys jumping from high school to the NBA. It's like it just like tells the story of the game of basketball in America and worldwide over the course of like a 20-hour thing. There is also a companion book written by Jackie McMullen with it, so that I own. So yeah, it's pretty cool. But yeah, that's like I wouldn't recommend that to just like any sports fan. Like you have to be a basketball.
No.
But if you like basketball at all, like or you consider yourself a diehard, like it's a must watch. I mean, I've told like a lot of kids that I've coached to watch it, some friends. It's a huge undertaking, so I haven't gotten that many people to like actually watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
So.
My argument against that though, when people are like, well, that's just ridiculous. It's like, well, if you watch one a night, like you watch it episodically, the way it's kind of set up, like the way it's broken down for you. What's the difference between that and binging fucking Breaking Bad? Like what's the difference? But people are so like okay with watching the same show like fucking over and over and over, but they get intimidated by new content that's not The Office,
Yeah, I would pitch this as a show though. I would not pitch it as a movie. I mean,
oh yeah, no, it's definitely not. But it's it's a docuseries.
Yeah, docuseries. Yeah. So the only two. Well, you're. Yeah, I guess
I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more leading up to like now.
Okay, keep going.
So, and one of them you're gonna love. You're gonna love the shout out. Maradona, 2019. Yeah, I mean,
absolutely amazing.
Fuck me. I rest in peace, legend. I mean, good lord, some of the coolest in-game footage I've ever seen. The Hand of God stuff, the 86 game that you were talking about earlier against England. That is like the footage they get of that game, the way they break it down, and that part of the documentary. I had like chills like everywhere when I was watching that the first time, and I was watching with other people who aren't as big of soccer fans, and they were like, "What a crazy moment!"
Yes,
like the actual Hand of God moment. And I remember I had a buddy at the time who was, he knows nothing. Like he didn't even know who Diego Maradona was, but he was just like, "Dude, like the like time capsule that moment is." Like the fact that now it just wouldn't be a big deal because we just watch replay and be like, oh, it's a fucking handball,
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
He's like the moment, like the stakes, like you can tell the crowd is just like fucking up for it. He's like, it's the 80s. He was just like, it's so cool. Like culturally, this is such a sick moment in sports, and therefore it's a sick moment in time. And
again, but what makes that documentary so good is just like The Last Dance. It's the unseen footage of his time in Napoli. That's really what makes that unique. And
yeah, like off the leash, like yes. Whoa, yeah,
this guy's crazy. Yeah, I mean he's dark. He's got some dark side to him. Like and just the world that he had to live in. I mean, it's not all his fault. I mean, he grew up in poverty, and then you see the world that he had to live in, and the way he was being pulled in so many different directions. It's like I mean, there's scenes where you see him like at parties, and he just has this like just dead look on his face, just like this tired like. And he's trying to kind of go through the motions and all that stuff, and then meanwhile he's producing outrageous stuff on the pitch every weekend. It's like he just was this, I mean, whirlwind of a person, that just kind of like sucked everything up around him. I mean, there's literally the Church of Maradona in Argentina. So that guy who directed that, Asif Kapadia, also directed the Amy Winehouse doc in 2015 and Senna. And
Senna is so good.
Senna's fantastic. Yeah.
And so is the Amy Winehouse one. Yeah, he's like one of the modern documentarians.
Can't wait to see what he does next. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I assume it's coming soon. Whatever he's been working on, because this is Maradona's 4 years ago. Came out on HBO. It's still on there. Like 100% must watch. I'd say one of the 5 best we've named so far.
To give him his credit, Asif Kapadia is the director.
Kapadia. There you go. Yeah. Senna. I was like, I don't know anything about this, but I'm in on fucking Brazilian Formula One racing.
Yeah. Why not? Yeah.
Fuck it. 2020. Here's some different stuff. Obviously, The Last Dance, which we've talked about.
Yep.
Basketball County in the Water, which is a really cool one, kind of about a certain area on the East Coast, kind of like the DMV area where like Kevin Durant played and whatnot. It's just a fun basketball one. And then there was the one that was also really huge on Netflix, Cheer. That docuseries was massive when it came out. And then they like did another season later on or whatever, a couple years later. And like I watched it because it was during COVID. We were living, my wife and I now, at the time, we were living with our mom, and we all watched it together. And we were just like, man, we had no idea that right here in Texas are like two of the cheer colleges. I had no idea. Navarro and fuck, what's the other one called? They're like junior colleges that are just like have these insane cheer programs, and I had just no idea. And while it's like obviously not my favorite, it was really entertaining. Like I understood like why it had the wave that it had. That's one of those COVID, like it benefited from COVID. People just being like, oh, what's on Netflix? Fuck it, oh, this is number one, I'll watch it. 2021, I got one, directed by Ben Proudfoot, the queen of basketball.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah. I had to shout that one out because I remember. I think you have a friend who knows that guy.
Yes, yeah, Eric, my friend Eric. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like it was up for the Oscar documentary short that year because it's like whatever 20 minutes long or something, 20 or 30 minutes, and it is so good, like really cool footage.
Lucia Harris, right? That's her name.
Yeah. Awesome stuff. That's on YouTube. Check it out if you haven't. And then 2022, I've got 3 basketball ones that I think pretty sure I know you've seen 2 of them. The Redeem Team, which is really cool. As LeBron, Wade, Kobe, Melo, awesome team. NYC Point Gods, really cool stuff if you like basketball. And then if you like culture and you like just wacky American things, the greatest mixtape ever, the And One documentary. It's like 45 minutes long. It is like equally hilarious and also just like, wow, I can't believe that was I can't believe that happened.
Well, and then there was the And One, the more like serious one that was on Netflix, the And One documentary about like the rise and fall.
Oh yeah, duh, yeah.
And that's like it was Untold. Is that series on Netflix?
Okay, yeah, Untold series. Those are legit.
The Malice in the Palace. They did that one too.
Yeah, Ron Artest, or sorry, Meta World Peace, like it's to say his give his 2 cents on that whole thing. Man. I mean, these are everywhere. These sports documentaries are all over the place. I'm sure there's 100 we didn't name, but those are ones that I know that we both have kind of seen.
So you went through our letterbox and looked at. I'm surprised you didn't see this one that I'm about to talk about here, because this is one of my absolute favorites, and I actually have the book. I've not read the book yet, but I really want to. It's one of the kind of like all time classic like soccer books. Like anytime you read like a 442, like best soccer books of all time, it's way up there. It's a One Night in Turin.
I've seen that.
Yeah, awesome. It's about the 1990 England World Cup squad, and particularly Paul Gascoigne and kind of the Gaz's tears on the night of the semifinal. So he gets booked in the second half, which means he's going to miss the final. The match is at 1-1 at the time, and there's the famous like little bit of Gary Lineker looking over the manager, Bobby Robson, and he says he kind of does that little like thing like this and goes, have a word with him, because he could tell he's like about to cry. And Paul Gascoigne like literally cries the pitch because he realizes, hey, even if we win this game, I'm gonna be suspended for the World Cup final. But he kind of gathers himself, and he kind of like endeared himself to English culture, and that was like a real turning point for English football. Where the 80s was, especially the late 80s, were really dark time. Kind of Thatcher had come down on a bunch of the youth, and it took away a bunch of the courts and took away a bunch of the fields and pitches, and it led to like supreme violence in the stands, which the Hillsborough disaster was part of that in 1989. They had a 5-year ban from European football, and then they kind of come out of that, this like kind of glorious summer, of Italia 90, that people look back on really fondly now. The only reason, they had to play their games like way off the coast, and they were in Sardinia. People were terrified of English supporters at the time, and then Paul Gascoigne kind of like endeared himself to like just the average like fan goer again, instead of kind of like the youth, like the young, like kind of hostile youth of the nation. And it led to, the sentiment, behind it led to the starting of the Premier League in 1992, which is blown into, the most famous sports league in the world right now. So So it's kind of like tells the story of all that. The book is more of an in-depth look on like their actual time in Italy during the World Cup. And I'm really excited to read it. So I Pete Davies, and it's actually called All Played Out. And then the document called One Night in Turin. I can't believe I missed that one. I'm sure there's a couple others I missed. That was 2010, and then there's another ESPN one. So E60 now does. So ESPN got rid of Outside the Lines, the TV show, but they do these like E60 like kind of long form like stories that are essentially kind of like 30 for 30s, but they did one called Unrivaled, and it was about the Colorado Avalanche and Detroit Red Wings.
Oh yeah,
in the
yeah,
90s
yeah.
and 2000s. It's awesome. You know who actually watched it first was our mom, and she was like, "Hey, have you ever watched this?" And I was like, "Oh, I saw that was on the ESPN app."
Okay.
And so I watched it, and it's like 2 hours. Really, really good though. It's yeah, well worth a watch if you like hockey at all. But no, One Night in Turin was the one that stuck out. That was like, oh, that's one of my 5 or 6 favorites that we didn't mention. But yeah, and I guess we should probably tie off the OJ Made in America part before we really dive into Minding the Gap. But
Yeah.
because yeah, it was my number 7. I mean, part of what makes it so good is the in-depth nature of it, and the amount of different parts of like American life it tries to touch on, and it uses the OJ chase in particular, kind of in '94, as like the crossroads of everything. Because obviously it's LA, it's the riots, it's like just race, celebrity worship, reality TV blowing up. Really, I mean, it's like it almost like was at the forefront of reality TV because people decided they'd rather watch this kind of guy get chased by the police than like the NBA finals. And it was the first time TV networks realized, oh man, there might be gold here. And then it kind of led to this whole wave of like reality stuff, and real life and craziness in real life, whether it's manufactured or not, is more entertaining to people than like stuff they've been served for the last 34 years. So it just hits at all these little intersections of American life, and obviously like the corrupt criminal justice system, and like all these, and like the really dark side of the LAPD and all that stuff. It's just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, it's so well done. They get so many people to talk, and the footage is just like masterfully put together to create this story. And it goes all the way back to explaining why OJ matters, like why he was so popular, in the 60s and 70s, and then when he became an actor and like a pundit later in the 80s and 90s. So yeah, I cannot recommend it highly enough. It is a bit of an undertaking, but if you have the time, it's well worth it.
Yeah. Is it on something right now? I wonder.
The ESPN app, it is. Yeah.
Okay. So just through that. So yeah, and that's directed by Ezra Edelman, who's like one of the goats of like, this conversation we're having. He's the guy who directed Magic and Bird, Courtship of Rivals in 2010. He did some 30 for 30 stuff and like the 2013, 14. And then all culminating to this moment of making one of the documentaries of our time. So couldn't really even know what to say about it anymore. It's one of those things. Just I can't believe we have it. Like when someone makes something that good and you watch it. I remember calling you after every episode. I was like, holy fuck, man. Like this is insane. And it was I had the same reaction to, because that was 2016. So I was living in Houston at the time, and you and I, it's just like a great sports year, especially for basketball, and especially that playoffs. I remember having the same kind of enthusiasm and excitement to talk about the documentary as I did when like Klay Thompson was torching the Thunder. It was that same, just like, what the fuck am I seeing? Or Game of Thrones at that time was fucking king. It was like this, oh my God, Jon Snow just died. Just like, it's like all those things. I just remember being so involved with that stuff and like always calling you and being like, did you see that? Like that was insane. And OJ Made America is one of those things that I remember talking to you, talking to mom, like on the phone after for hours about what we just watched.
Well, yeah. I mean, I had that crazy like knee injury and like blew out my knee like every ligament I had, and had to just like I was just like bedridden for like a couple of weeks after this happened. It was right around the time that this got released, and there was like Euro 2016, the NBA final 2016 NBA finals, crazy. So it was like always like really cool stuff to watch each night. And I watched the whole series with our mom. Like she would just come to my room and we would just watch it each night. And it was so funny to watch it through her eyes because she's taking different things from it. And there's parts of it, she, oh man, like I forgot like how big this was. And then she was able to recall like, oh yeah, I remember where I was and like this happened, and watching this and watching some of the trial. So it was really cool.
Yeah, because she was like 30. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So watching kind of from her eyes, that was actually really interesting. And Ezra Edelman, the director, he's done some other obviously really good stuff. Like you mentioned, the Courts for Rival stuff. He also did The Curious Case of Kurt Flood. That's like one of the shorts. Emmy-winning The Brooklyn Dodgers, The Ghosts of Flatbush. He also wrote and directed a special on the former Big East conference called Requiem for the Big East, which is another.
Oh, that one's legit. Yeah,
really, really good. He produced Wyatt Cenac's Problem Areas, an HBO documentary series that ran for 2 seasons, and he's also set to direct a Roberto Clemente biopic for Legendary Entertainment. So that'll be cool.
Hell yeah, awesome. Yeah, God, what a guy. I mean, I wonder after you put that out in the world, OJ Made in America, and you're like, I mean, just like I'm spent.
Like what else is there? Yeah.
Yeah. What else? And that's that. Yeah, it's amazing. So really cool when you had it as your number 7. I was like, oh man, what a cool. I didn't really think about it. I was like, man, that's such a cool shout out. And then a little bit later, I talked about my number 6 being Mind the Gap, which is kind of where we're gonna move our attention. And it's not a it's about 3 kids who skate. They're not professional skateboarders, but they very much care about the sport a lot. Mind the Gap. A lot of the documentaries we named are very, very about the action, about like what happened on the court or what happened on the field. Mind the Gap. It reminds me of Hoop Dreams in a way where it's very much more concerned with what happens space between the notes, like what happens to Kier from the time he wakes up to before he starts skateboarding. What job does he have? What does he have to do? What's his mom like? How many siblings does he have? And we find those things out organically throughout Minding the Gap, where by the end of it, you feel like you know all 3 of them. You feel like I don't know if you want to say friends, but you feel like you know them. You know, like what they're about. And of course, you like some more than others, but it's that kind of doc. It uses skateboarding as just like a vessel. Same way they do. The same way they just like escape stuff. They use skateboarding as this thing to like, it's a drug to get away. So I absolutely love this. I mean, when I first saw it, I think I watched it mostly because Sean Fennessy of The Ringer recommended it and was like, this is my favorite thing of 2018. And him and I are always, as far as like movie people and podcasters and kind of movie writers, I'm always like, I feel the exact same way as he does most of the time. And so I was like, okay, I'll check it out. And when I did, I was just like broken. I couldn't believe how much it felt like it was made for me, but also made for just everybody, made for people. And everyone I've shown it to or has, stumbled across it has been like, wow, dude, like that was incredible. I've never gotten a response of like, oh, that was fine. Yeah. That was okay. Everybody's kind of like, wow. I mean, what an experience.
Yeah, and that was mine with it too. I mean, obviously I'd heard about it. You were listening to similar podcasts stuff like that, and I was like, okay, this obviously sounds pretty good. And I think you saw it before I did. And you're like, okay, no, like make it a point to see it. And I did. I wondered how we were going to do this one because it's a little bit hard to talk about some of this stuff because it's so different than like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where you're talking about like the different segments of the movie and the choices the director makes and stuff like that. It's like obviously there is those things in documentary filmmaking. I mean that's a huge part of it, but because it's just like you're just kind of shooting just like these people's lives, it's like I don't know, it's a little bit less complex in a way. It's like because it's not written, because it's like this is just telling a story that's like being kind of played out in front of you. It's not like he's in the back, like, oh, what if I had Zach do this? And what if I had this guy do this? It's like, that's not how this is happening, So, and even when we get to the awards, it's like, I mean, it's like, it's a little bit harder to do for a documentary. It's like best performance.
Oh yeah.
Like it's not a performance, it's their life, It's like, this is,
yeah.
And make documentaries so good. It's like, it's true to life. Right. So I struggle with that part of it, but I absolutely love the movie. And I had a little basketball thing tonight, and I was telling some of the guys, they always ask me like, oh, you do podcasts, and like, what are you talking about? And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm talking about this movie tonight with my brother, Minding the Gap. And they're like, what's that? I said, it's kind of about skateboarding, but I said, like, not really. It's like
yeah,
a little bit, but it's like it's not a skateboarding documentary. I wouldn't call it that. Like,
no.
It's just about people who happen to skate and like use that as a bit of an outlet for their life.
That's how they met,
Yes. But it's about 3 people's lives and some of the struggles. I said, honestly, there's parts of it that are completely heartbreaking and some of it that's pretty interesting. And this one kid was just like, wow, it's like, all right, I might watch that. He's like 16, and I was like, no,
that's the age to watch this at.
Yes.
Like if I would have caught this when I was in high school, I mean, fuck me, like this would have been kind of like a mind-boggling type thing. But it did catch me at a good time because when it came out, my now wife was pregnant, and I watched it. And then the night my daughter was born, the nurse suggested that I go home for one last good night of sleep. She was like, that's just what I tell people. I think because the dad needs to like take over the next few days. Like go get like a good solid 8 to 10 hours. Like just do it. Like you're gonna need it. So I did that. I went home and I watched Minding the Gap. Like I just had this crazy emotional day of like my daughter being born. And I was like, what am I going to do? Like, go watch like a fucking James Bond movie. I was like, no, I'm going to watch Minding the Gap and just like allow it to just like pierce into my heart. And then watching the scenes of Zach be a dad, I was like, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Tell you what.
Yeah.
So it did kind of hit me at an interesting time because it was like, I mean, it's so real that if you're going through something real, surely you're going to relate in some kind of way. which is like why I love it so much. Inside an hour and a half, you do feel moments of joy. When it's like 4th of July and they're all on the roof, they're like, fuck yeah, just being kind of free. You're like, cool, cool, good for them. Like young dudes just having fun. But then there's other times where, yeah, you're talking about abuse. You're talking about cycles of abuse from different generations. And you're like, God damn, like someone stop it, And Bing tries his best to kind of connect his two friends, Kier and Zach, like into his, like, hey, I get it. I'm old, like I'm older than you guys, and I've seen it. It's happened to me, and I want to help y'all like not do that. And one of them kind of listens to him, and the other one doesn't.
Right.
And that's like why it's so captivating, is because whatever was in him as a teenager, Bing, to just film these kids like over and over and over, and get really good footage of them skating. Like these kids are good at skating. They're like quality skateboarders, but also just some of the stuff that Kier says and the way he like walks around his house, the way Zach just pounds beers and is just like there's something at the bottom of the cup every time. Like there's something he's looking for. He's always like, oh, if I have another beer, like I might find what I need. And it just never happens. It's so real and so raw. It is hard to talk about, but we'll do our best. Favorite quote. There are great quotes in documentaries. We're gonna do favorite music moment. Great score in this movie. Also a pretty good soundtrack. And then for performance, it's favorite person.
Yeah.
Who is the person who
favorite? Because I think here it's like God, the kid he just steals your heart. But it's like it's more maybe like most compelling. Maybe
most compelling person. And then what's your favorite like moment of the doc? And not scene, but moment. Like what?
Okay.
Either what made you cry or what just kind of, hey, like that was actually kind of cool. Like for me, one of the things that I've always loved about this, and one of the things that I do respect about Zach is his honesty at times.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say the same thing. His honesty.
And so like, while yes, by the end of it, you're like, oh God, this guy hit that girl. Like, God damn it, But you're also like, when he starts talking, you're like, man, this guy's got some like weird wisdom somewhere deep in there that every now and again comes out.
It's really misguided though. Yeah.
Extremely misguided. And it's like so clear that he didn't have someone to look up to be like, hey, is this cool? He was the one who was like, I'm the badass of the group. But there is a moment where it's him and his child, Elliot. And Elliot's probably like 2 years old. And he gets to go to the skate park with him. The way he's skating, it's like he's just running from something. And the way Bing Liu films it, it's like he's pounding the ramp. Like the way he's going down, it's just boom, boom, boom. Like everything's so aggressive and like violent. The way he's skateboarding, because it's like, I might not do this for the next 2 weeks, so I'm going to attack. When I do get to skate, and like my homies are watching my child right now, I'm going to attack. Like I'm gonna like be as athletic as I can, be as aggressive as I can, and like I like really appreciate that. Like he like took every ounce of himself and like I'm gonna skate hard today, and like I like that. I think that's fucking cool. Like he held on to that passion, and when you're watching him skate, it's like you're watching him do what he's supposed to be doing.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, do you want to do any like kind of sort of chronological bit, or just kind of talk about go into categories?
I think going into categories, we'll just kind of jump around. I mean, it's only an hour and a half,
No, I know there's not like a ton to talk about. Yeah.
So we'll kind of go through it all. So yeah, we'll you go. What's your favorite quote? We'll start with that.
Okay. So it's from Kier. Kier Johnson could be our cousin. Probably.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Rockford.
He's talking about skating, and he says it would kind of be like a drug in a way. Like I can seriously be on the verge of having a fucking mental breakdown, but as long as I'm able to go skate, I'm completely fine. And I think just for like so many people, that is like their little hobby, their little getaway. Like they just need that thing to just be like, okay, like even when there's this craziness going on around me, like as long as I can go play basketball, as long as I can go play soccer, as long as I can go to the batting cages, as long as I can go dance, as long as I can go, rollerblade, whatever it may be, ride my bike, everything will be okay. In that moment, it'll be okay. And I think that's just like he captures that really perfectly.
Yeah, it's a beautiful quote. It's a beautiful moment in the doc altogether. I'll be talking about it at large later. Yeah, I mean, he says some stuff that is so poetic without even trying. He's not even trying to be this philosophical guy. He's just kind of speaking from the dome. I'm completely obsessed with Kier. I still follow him on Instagram. He's like doing great. So like that's really cool. Years later, now he's like my age, and he's doing wonderful. So I'm like really, Yeah. From what I've seen, yeah, he's like dating this girl who's really attractive and skating and doing music stuff. And it looks like, yeah, he's still living in Denver. So great,
Good.
like good for him, you know. I love that. I can't remember what his handle is. He's got a strange Instagram username. I can't remember what it is, but yeah, he's awesome. Yeah, that thing. I mean, like you relate to it because you love, like, for you, it might be a couple things for you because you have like different, different interests. It might be just being in a basketball gym, like, oh
Mhm.
fuck yeah, finally, like if anything is going on around you, or someone told you something, or you're disappointed in somebody, you're not going to be disappointed in the way the ball bounces back to you.
Nope.
Like it's the
Nope.
same thing every time. Like it's like, yep, because I'm controlling it, it comes right back to me. uh I don't know if I have like one thing that's like that. Obviously now, having a child, that's very much like, when I see Willow, it's like boom, like everything just doesn't matter. Like, so I don't want to call my child my hobby, but it definitely is. It definitely is one of those things where it's like I could be on the verge, on the way home from work, having a mental breakdown, and then I see Willow and I'm like, so what? like,
Yeah, yeah.
like fuck it, fuck what I whatever that was. Her like just genuine joy to see me is like, I mean, everything else. But I definitely feel that way. I went and played basketball yesterday and I was like, oh my God. Like, it had been a while and it was outside and I was like, I don't really care. I was sweating my ass off. It's 102 degrees, but I was listening to music and I was just shooting. And there was like a couple of moments where I was like, I hadn't shot in forever, but I like couldn't miss. And I was like, I love this sport. Like,
Yeah.
I love the feeling of like shooting over and over, and like you kind of get into a rhythm and you're like, oh my God, like I'm not even in control right now. It's just like some other thing
Yeah.
possessing me, and you're just going. So yeah, I think anyone who's a person has something, painting, reading, podcasting, watching stuff, whatever it is, just keep doing it. Please keep doing it. So I love that quote to death. I almost chose it, but I went with the one at the beginning of the documentary. It's Zach. This is one of his kind of like, what? Like, where'd that come from? Uh, and it's one of the main ones. It's IMDb. So I chose a different one when we did this like a couple years ago on Oscar Sunday. So I want to choose this one for this episode. Zach says, "Your whole life, society tells you, like, oh, be a man. You're strong and you're tough, and margaritas are gay." And he's like, like, you don't grow up thinking that's the way you are. When you're a kid, you just do, you just act, and then somewhere along the line, everybody loses that. Like, man, that is just super powerful. Next category, favorite music moment. You can go with a piece of the score, or you can pick a soundtrack, a needle drop. So what'd you go with?
So I went with the score kind of swelling during the opening credits, as we're actually getting some kind of some of the better, I think, skate footage from the film, where they're kind of going down like through why am I blanking on the name of the town? Rockford, Illinois. And at first you don't really know exactly where you are, right? Because do they say exactly at the beginning it's Rockford, Illinois? Yeah, I think you don't know that until a little bit later, like a few minutes into the movie.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, because the beginning is super organic, like because it's them like climbing up like the roof, and then they're like,
yeah,
"Fuck this! Like, I don't want to do this shit." Yeah,
yeah. And yeah, the skating footage, it just looks like it feels really good outside too. Like as like they're skating, like there's kind of that
yep.
breeze. It's like that kind of 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock kind of golden hour, moment. Really cool. I think it's really cool seeing the score kind of swelling in that moment, and you're kind of getting a feel for like what these people are about.
Yeah, it's great. That goes along with what I just chose for my favorite quote is, as like they kind of like go down from the roof, and Zach says that line. After he says, everyone loses that. They're like skating for a little bit longer, and then it shows them, yeah, like going down the street, and you're like, oh man, this is sick. And it's, you and I lived in the Midwest together in St. Louis, not far. And there are those days like that where you're just like, man, it feels amazing out here. Like, it is such a beautiful day. I'm like, I'm up for it. I'm up for just being outside. So yeah, the theme music for this doc is so good. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with that choice. I think I probably chose it last time we did this, because it's great stuff. But I'm gonna choose a needle drop, and man, it's tough. I'm like deciding right now which one it would be. Probably Video Life, the song by Chris Spedding. It plays towards the beginning. It's like when they're doing the whole montage and you're kind of learning like what the age of these guys are, and it shows like Zach age 15 to like now, and Bing like age 17 to now, and Kier age 12 to now. And so you get like an idea of who they are, and it like shows them like throwing like a TV off of just being like punks, like being skaters. So I love that song, Video Life. It's always been, since I've seen this, it's been one of those songs that's just like on my Spotify playlist, and I hear it all the time. And our brother Jeremy loves the song too, so kind of a shout out to him. Video Life by Chris Spedding. But yeah, the theme is so good. Favorite or not favorite? I like the way you put it. Most compelling person. What do you got?
So I'll go with Zach. I just,
Yeah.
man, I mean, something about him, I'm just like, like, yeah, it's like he's so close. He's so close to like kind of digging himself out of this like cycle and just cannot quite do it. It's like there's just something kind of blocking whatever it is. And you see at the end of the movie, he's kind of, with that other girl who flew him back, and he's Denver wasn't for me, man. It's like I mean, I don't know. It's like he's just the type of guy. It's like it's going to be so hard for him to just not fall into the same exact cycle as whatever came before him. Obviously, there's the reveal of him, being physical towards his girlfriend, which is like terrible, and just like obviously you lose a lot of kind of respect for him, but like I didn't necessarily lose empathy for him. Just lose a lot of respect for him. So, but and there's moments in the film where he really like seems like he's going to turn a corner or like he's close. And you said like he does have like the occasional kind of philosophical thing. You're like, okay, that's actually kind of interesting. I mean, you're a little off the mark on some of it, but like, he's close to being this like kind of reliable, like pretty solid person, and just can't quite get there. But I mean, as sad as it is, thinking about Zach, the human being, as a kind of person in this film, it's absolutely compelling to watch. I mean, it's impossible not to say that. So I would go with him.
Yeah, right from the get-go, the stuff he's saying, and then shortly after he's like looking at Bing, and he's like smoking weed, and he's like, can I like do this like while you're filming, because like you're trying to make some fucking movie or something, like, well, like, can I do this? And Bing's like, yeah, like be yourself, man. And then he has the quote, he's like shotgunning a beer, and he's like, I've always needed something more out of life. He's like, I don't know like what it is, like what I'm searching for. It's like, yeah, no shit, dude, like we're watching you over and over do this thing where you're lying to yourself. You're like clearly have like an addictive personality. When he's in Denver working at that sandwich shop, he's like shaved his face or whatever, and he tells Bing, he's like, yeah, man, like I'm doing good up here. Like this girl flew me out from Milwaukee. Like it's no big deal. Like whatever. Like she paid like $150 for the Uber. He's like, and like I'm not drinking anymore. And then like 2 minutes later, he's working at that same sandwich shop, and he goes over and he's like mic'd up, and Bing is filming him from like far away while he's making sandwiches. And Zach grabs like a big gulp, like a cup from like a gas station, and he sips on it, and he goes, there's liquor in here. And you're like, dude, like you are so many like toxic, he like embodies toxic masculinity so many times throughout this movie, while also, like you said, like carrying something about him that you have empathy. So he's the ultimate documentary, kind of person to study. I'm totally kind of like intoxicated by the dude. So I can't really disagree with you at all. Like it's a great choice. The documentary would be a lot more stale without him, So you kind of need that guy who's just kind of like always on, keeps you on your toes. It's like a catfish, He's just like always keeps you kind of like, man, what's about to happen next? Like, what dumb thing is this guy going to do next? It's crazy, man. The like kind of not wanting to be a father, also like his girlfriend Nina, the abuse towards her. It's just like, God damn, dude. Just like you said, there's like a moment when he's working for the roofing company, and he goes to like do his GED and all that, and he clearly fails it. He's walking out of that, and that's when I was like, oh fuck. Like the first time I watched it, I was like, yeah, it's over for him, because he's like, man, I don't know, because like, I took the GED. It was really easy to me, and I am not a studious person at all, but that was really easy to me, taking the GED. It was like a very like I was like, really? Like I could have skipped all that shit for this. Like, are you kidding me? But like the way he operates, clearly it just wasn't easy to him. And he comes out of the like testing center, and he's like, man, I don't know what they were asking me to do. Like that was just rough. Like he's like, that was just rough. And he goes home and starts drinking beer. He's like, well, fuck that. I guess I'm gonna go back to like what I know how to do, and that's drinking and just kind of bullshitting. So it's really, really sad. But the most compelling to me is Kier. It's kind of like the easy choice. He's the guy that you're kind of rooting for the entire time. you're rooting for all of them, but you feel the best about rooting for Kier. The guy, the smile that he has when he moves from dishwasher to server at that little restaurant, and he's just so giddy about like, I don't have to do that shit anymore. He's like, fuck yeah. And he's like making real money, and he talks about how like his mom couldn't pay the water bill, so like he paid it. And that felt really good. The way he talks about his dad, I mean, just God, this guy, like he's just incredible. I immediately, the first time I watched it, I was like, I gotta find out like what this guy's doing right now. That's how I like found him on Instagram, and I follow him still, and I just like hope nothing but the best for the dude. He's something else. And as a skater, kind of bring a little more sport into it. As a skater, is so fun to watch. This like really kind of like ragtag style, but there's like clearly like a signature there. He like uses a lot of like manual tricks. He uses a lot of pretty like flashy, but not like arrogant flashy. There's a lot of skaters who like it'll be like obvious that they're doing something like, oh, like look at me. He just kind of does it. Like he's just that athletic and that good at it. He just like does it with ease. And when he lands the trick, or rather really a stunt, he like jumps off of like a ledge onto a trash can onto like the sidewalk, and everybody's like, fuck yeah, that was so sick. And like how happy he is, like, it's just that kind of daredevil nature, that pure pressure stuff. Like your other skate friends are telling you like, oh, you got to do this, you got to do this, and you nail it. It's like, that's got to be a sick feeling, So
Yeah.
He has a couple of those moments where you're like, man, this guy's good at this. And now he's not, he's still, at the end of the documentary, they tell you he's been sponsored by a company out in Denver to skate, and he still is. Like he still gets a little bit of money to skate. So great for him, like great, like it paid off.
Yeah, he reminds me of one of those like in other sports, and particularly basketball, because I coach that, but like those kind of like straight line athletes, like he might struggle to like they're really like fast, like end to end, and like they might be kind of strong or kind of wiry or whatever, but it's like the coordination maybe isn't there as much. Like he may not be the type of guy that like just pick up any sport and play it, but you can tell there's like an athleticism there. You know what I mean? Like there's like there's like and also like a determination too that he has. It's like pretty pretty clearly there. That's like really impressive. Like any athlete needs. So no, I actually found it just kind of the way he walks. He has that kind of weird like hunch a little bit, like the way he kind of walks around. It's like he does have this like almost like slightly sheepish like way about him. And just like his mom and how much he talks about his dad, even though his dad obviously there's some hard times. Man, I mean the kid just he obviously is the one that's reminded me of some people that I've worked with. Like just kind of steals your heart. It's hard not to.
Oh yeah. The moment where like Bing admits to him like hey, like I see me in your story and vice versa, and when Kier's just like, whoa, Bing,
he's like, really?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool, man. Yeah, like, it's just such like damn, like what like an innocent, just like beautiful moment. I love when Kier starts hanging out with the other kids. And he starts hanging out with, clearly the other kid he's like hanging out with, that he works with at that restaurant, was like clearly a good influence on him, but also skated, but also like went to school, like was going to school, and was like someone good to like bounce off of, and like to be around, where he's like, I don't really hang out with Zach anymore because Zach's a shithead, and like just wants to drink, and like is like not paying his bills, and moved out to Denver. He's like, no, I'm hanging out with like my skate friends who are my age. It's like, good for you, man. Like, good for you. You kind of like made one of the hard decisions that like teenagers have to make, which is pick the right friends, pick the right people to be around. And they don't have to be great people, but the right people for you, who's going to like challenge you, who's going to make you want to do the things that you actually want to do. In this case, for him, it was skating and like getting good at skating. And with Zach, it was too much like dicking around. And with these other kids, it was like, no, let's get good at it. Let's like challenge ourselves and be athletes. So I'm like always so proud of him when I watch this doc. I'm like, Kier, come on,
like, good job, buddy.
You got this, man. So I'm with him, the whole way. And his laugh too. His laugh is so like, God, it's so unique. It's so him. You're like the just kind of like bro, but he's clearly like not just a bro. I like some of the moments too that like I don't feel like I can totally speak on. Neither of us can. But I do like the moments, like a documentary needs kind of like some friction. I like the moments when he's the only black kid around a bunch of white skaters, and he talks about how his dad would tell him like, man, you got a bunch of white friends, but remember you're black. And like, that's crazy. That's like such like a I mean, mind fuck for this kid. He's like, well, I'm just doing what I want to do. And in my city, it so happens that these kids are white that are like doing what I like to do. There are plenty of black skaters out there. It just so happens where he's at in Rockford, Illinois, he's just kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. But he stands his ground, and like you're so proud of him in those moments. Like he kind of said, like, fuck you, dad, I'm gonna do what I want to do.
Well, and I actually, that the film could have either gone like even like really deep into that and like the kind of like racial identity part, or they could have just done like how the kids treat each other, just like, oh, who cares? Like, hey, you're just out here with us. Like, I don't care. Like that was like what I enjoyed about it. It was like I'm kind of glad they picked that direction, because he wasn't like feeling like it was that big a deal. You know what I mean? So it's like, well, if
Correct.
I don't feel like alienated or like then like
and Bing is not white either. So
right.
the like the tall guy like filming everything, they're like, man, what's up with this guy? But
yeah,
he's not white either. I do love that scene from Zach. One of my favorite moments from Zach is when he's like, if someone poked Kier in the eye, I'd fucking kill him. He's like that's like, don't mess with him. Like I know he's kind of like tender, but like don't mess with him. Like I'll fucking kick your ass. It's such like a like little brother, but like it's like a little like an older brother, younger brother scenario, but the younger brother surpasses him. Like like if two guys are like both like go to the NBA, they're both like younger and older. Trying to think like Taylor Griffin is older than Blake Griffin, but Blake Griffin was like, by the time he was 16, he's like, I'm better than you.
Yeah.
It's like that thing where like I passed you, like I'm better at the thing that you taught me how to do. I'm better than you now, and like I'm gonna take it further than you ever even imagined. Which is why I think this is a great time to bring up mid '90s, a movie that came out around the same time. A feature film by Jonah Hill, but the character of Ray is always saying that. He's always like, yeah, like you guys do this for fun, but like I'm going to take this somewhere. Like I have that will, that determination to take skating. Like that's gonna be my life. I'm gonna get so good at it that someone's gonna have to pay me. And I look at Kier kind of like that, where he's like, no, like I want to be really good. And I love kids like that. I fucking love them. Like that really, really want to get down. And of course you do too, coaching and training. Like those are my favorite kids. The ones that like really want to work and like really get good at something. Whether they reach the end game or not, it's like the trying that matters, the attempt.
Yeah. I mean, no, spot on. I mean, I've got a couple right now that I like. So one who I've started somewhat recently with, and I stopped them after a workout and said, okay, how good do you actually want to be? I mean, this person's they're young. I mean, they're 13, 14 years old, I was like, how good do you want to be? And I want to be great. Like, I want to be great. And I said, because these workouts could be different based on this, how you respond to this. Like, this can be fun and we can kind of have some, which is great. This should always be fun. I hope you always leave here thinking like, oh, I'm glad I did that. I said, but I could point out something you've done wrong on every single shot you've taken or every single rep that you've done on whatever move we're working on or ball handling thing. I said, do you want that? Do you actually want that feedback? And it was like, yep, I want that. And I was like, okay, here we go. Let's say,
you're
gonna be a very good player then. Yeah. And they are. So that's, I totally like relate to that and see that all the time. It's like, and the people, when I get that, it's like, I just want to keep working with them, and hopefully they enjoy it too. And it's great. So I don't know. I related to that. Yeah. Big time. So the Kier thing, like, yeah, I mean, it's weird to think that like the movie is kind of, you're watching it kind of through his eyes, because it's clearly through Bing's eyes. And obviously we haven't even talked about like the relationship between him and his mother at all yet, which that's like the emotional core, of the film at some point is and also his older brother. I mean, man, that scene is just like, wow. Like when he's kind of going through like, I was sitting here one day, Bing's older brother, like, and my dad, I thought everything was fine that day, nothing really crazy happened. And then all of a sudden he just starts saying, I don't like the way you look. And he starts just chopping off pieces of my hair with like just these like kitchen scissors. I mean, it's just like, man, like just brutal. And what sucks is like, so many people are going through things like that. And it's like, wow. I mean, like, I guess we just got super lucky. Like, that's just like, I mean, no kid, like, and you can see the trauma he still has from it. And it's like, he's whatever. I mean, because how old do you think? Is he older than Bing? Do you ever say what his age is? He's older than Bing, right? Yeah.
No, he's actually younger, because that's his actual dad.
Okay. That's right.
And so Bing is probably like a few years older. And so Bing is from like, that's his, they both have the same mom.
Right.
But the younger one with like the point, he has like his hair like tied back.
Yeah.
I mean, when he walks you through the house, you're like, Jesus, like terrible. It's like a horror movie. You're like, I want no part of that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, That's what I chose for, not my favorite, but like the most compelling scene is when Bing like calls out his mom.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. We can just. I had the same one. I mean, I think that's. We should just talk about it now.
because every great doc has a moment where like the hairs stand up on your arm and you're like, whoa, like this is real. This is really happening, like in
There's some
real
sort of
time. Right?
revelation. Yeah,
Yeah, like every great, especially a doc that's trying to tell like a linear story about like a person's life. Like you just, and it happens right here with his mom. And when she admits things, finally, you're like finally, like all Bing was looking for was some fucking honesty,
yeah,
like.
yeah,
And when she finally breaks down, is like, I didn't, like, I knew it was happening, but I didn't know it was as bad as like you guys had it. And Bing's like, well, yeah, you were never home. He's like, by the time like you guys got married, he was retired. His stepdad, he was retired and always at home, and you were out working like 12-hour shifts. He's like, of course, like I was miserable. Like he's like, you put me through hell. Like, and it's just this like, come on, like give me some sympathy here, mom. And she's just like, she like starts crying, but she's also like, I don't know what to tell you. Like,
yeah, yeah.
like it happened, like get over it, but also like I'm sorry. It's just this whirlwind of emotion, and Bing, you can tell, is like, finally, we at least talked about it, at least discussed it. And you would hope now in present day that their relationship is better because they finally like put the walls down and were like, what the fuck was that? Like, are you kidding me? And you hope it happens with Zach and his parents, like, or his dad, right? Like his mom walked out on him when he was a kid. You hope that like there's some kind of honest conversation with a father and a son, or a mother and a son at some point, like, hey, you did me dirty. Like, what the hell was that? And like Kier never really got to do that with his dad. So like that moment with Bing and his mom is like, this is what it's all about. Like this is what like documentaries are about, storytelling, and like what healing as a person's all about. So I've always just been like, I mean, how can you not choose that for like the most incredible scene of the doc? Because it just does everything you want a doc to do.
Yeah, no, yeah, spot on. I mean, I barely have anything to add, and it's just like, um, it's just so hard to watch, like that helplessness of both of them, really, of just like, man, why? And she's like, well, like, I don't even know what to say. Like, I don't know why. Like, it's like, I just, in the moment, it felt like that was the right thing to do. And I needed to work. And it's like, you could tell at some point in her life, she just said, I'm going to put this kind of out of sight, out of mind. And like, oh, I knew it was
Yep.
kind of bad, but I didn't know it was that bad. It's like, how could you not know, like, there's that bad, but it's just like, you just, in those moments, you probably just feel like, well, I just had to just keep going and keep trucking. And, and she talked about like, I didn't want to be alone. She had this like fear of being alone, and where did
Yeah.
that come from? And who knows? And, it's like, um, I don't know, man. I talk to the kids I coach and train, like the ones I'm close to, like with about like anything. We talk about like whatever, and I've talked to somebody, about like, hey, that kind of fear of being alone thing. And it's like, that's fine, but it's also like that can lead you to some bad places if you're not careful with that, So, it sometimes leads you to be a little bit more social, and that's great. But like, yeah, it's also, there's a dark side to it too. So I don't know, man. It's that whole thing was just like, even that second time watching it, it's like, you just kind of just lock in, stop everything. It's just like you're watching this. I mean, he's filming her. I mean, he's got like all these lights and these cameras, but it's like, it's just them two. There's nothing else going on, like
Yeah.
two of them, a mother and a son, trying to find some closure on something. It's crazy.
Yeah. Completely mind-boggling stuff. So it's incredible. And really, like, yeah, like the most compelling, of course, Kier and Zach are both like, wow, look at, like, these guys are so incredible to watch. But the guy being filmed, this motherfucker, like,
Yeah.
it's not like a traditional doc where it's like interview, camera you pointed here. I mean, he's filming guys skate, which is like its own job. Like there's a job for like guys who follow, Eric Costin and Paul Rodriguez and these like legendary street skaters. Like their job is to film them and like get good at following them and like figuring out like what their cadence is as a skater. And Bing does that like for fun with these two guys who aren't even professional, aren't paying him, but he does it like beautifully, like
Yeah.
seamlessly. There are times where you're like, who's behind the camera? Oh, it's Bing. Like it's Bing. And then you look at his IMDb and you're like, oh my God, this guy has a whole filmography resume of, assistant cameraman, cinematographer. Like this guy's a camera genius. So like no wonder at like as a teenager he was like, I'm just gonna like do this. Like this is how it started. It's like filming kids skate, filming himself skate.
No, it's really
It's
cool.
really, really, really cool. So like hats off to Bing for this. This is like a flat out achievement. So if you're to pick like a winner of the movie, it's him. I
Yeah,
mean,
definitely.
he
Definitely.
he gets the closure with his mom. He's the one who kind of calls out both of his friends, like, "Hey, like I see you, and I see what you're doing." Like when he calls out Zach and is like, "What? Why would you hit her?" Like that whole scene is unreal when he's on the hill with Zach and Zach's like drinking a tall boy, and Zach's like, "Sometimes you got to hit a bitch, man." Like,
Yeah, no, I was like, dude, what are you talking about? Yeah,
and
like,
he's just like going and rambling, and Bing's just like letting him do it, but he's
yeah,
also like I you can't just do that.
yeah, yeah. He's
Like,
clearly
that's
disappointed. He's disappointed. Yeah,
yeah. He's like, "You're my friend, man. Like I look at you as a younger brother, and you're doing all this shit." So it's just incredible. Like what Bing is able to accomplish as a director, filmmaker, uh, skater, cameraman, just all these things. This is his creation, and like good for him. It's like now it's a part of the Criterion collection. Like fuck yeah, I own it. I own the Criterion edition. A lot of really cool bonus features on that. Like hell yeah, dude. Like you made a really low budget doc throughout a decade, and now it's a part of like one of the most prestigious collections in the entire universe for movies. So that's just so cool. And it was up like got to go to the Oscars. Like what? Like, that's so incredible. Just like kind of the like David and Goliath story of the little documentary that almost did. That almost won an Oscar. It's really cool. I'll cherish it forever. It's one of those things. And really now I want to do the. All right, now let's go over to see what's in the box.
What's in the fucking box? Give me the gun.
First review here I have from Ella Kemp. She's a Letterboxd crew member. She works for Letterboxd and also uses the app for her own film journey. She's awesome. She does lots of cool videos for them. You'll see like on Letterboxd's Instagram account, she'll do like she'll go to movie premieres, and like when Asteroid City came out, she like asked all the cast members, "Hey, what's your 4 favorites?" Like that would be on your Letterboxd profile. Really cool stuff. She's awesome. She wrote for Minding the Gap, 4.5-star review. "If I could never show my dad any more films again, I'm glad we just watched this one." Damn, hell yeah. I couldn't relate more. Like this is one of those things when you show it to someone, you're like, "There's no turning back now."
yeah,
Like I just I just exposed you to this really really tough thing that's gonna like be with you forever.
yeah. I like that, and I think you're gonna keep all these positive, right? Like it's kind of because it's like, yeah, we don't really need to. Yeah,
I don't want to. I'm doing one more, just 2 for today. I don't. It has an 8 on IMDb, 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 4.3 on Letterboxd. There's not a lot of haters out there because why would you?
yeah.
This one is from Adam Bernstein. Great follow. He's a pro member on Letterboxd. He wrote this right after it came out in 2018. 4.5-star review. "How can it be 90 minutes and still have the epic sweep of Hoop Dreams or the Up series? How can it be about 3 skate bros in Rockford, Illinois, but also be about everything? Magic." Yep, that's about right. I can't disagree with any part of that review. I feel like the exact same way.
No, not at all. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. Like obviously it's only 90 minutes, and like at time, like this is not a normally this is like a negative thing. It feels longer because of the scope of it. Like it's like, oh, that like you kind of get to the end like that was only 90 minutes, but it's also like that's not a bad thing. Like it's not like, oh man, like that, that took a while to finish. It's like that yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's like it does have this like massive scope and tells a story of this like number, big number of years with like these fully fleshed out characters. I guess that's the benefit of focusing on just 3, really,
Yeah,
who would you say is like kind of the 4th? I guess maybe his girlfriend, Zach's girlfriend.
yeah. And then there's a guy named Kyle that like pops up a few times. He's like Zach's roommate. But yeah, I think Nina definitely gets the or the 4th most
Yeah, screen time.
screen time. She's fascinating. Like I really like the scenes when she moves in with her aunt and uncle, and they just like bring her in, and they're just like, "No worries, like we got you. Like put everything at the front door, leave it there. We you don't have to worry about that here." It's like really cool. It's like wow. I mean, they live in this beautiful home. Like good for her. Like she saw an outlet and took it and was like, "This is gonna be good for my kid."
Yep. Yep. That looks like so many kind of like Midwestern like suburb houses. That was like a perfect.
Yeah, I was gonna say this movie definitely reminds me of like O'Fallon.
Yes. Yes. Sure.
O'Fallon, Missouri, and Lake
St.
St. Charles.
Charles.
Or Lake St. Louis, St. Charles, all those surrounding areas. I guess that would be West St. Louis.
Yeah.
Like they all remind me totally of Rockford, Illinois. Which Rockford's not this tiny town, it's like 500,000 people or something, but it's like small enough to be not.
It's about. I looked it up. It's about 200,000.
Oh, 200,000. Okay. I did look it up too. I just, obviously got the number wrong. So it's not tiny.
No,
but it's
not at all. Yeah, not at all.
But it's not like a big city.
It's about an hour and a half west of Chicago.
Okay. Yeah. And clearly it's not that far from Milwaukee because that's where that girl.
Right. So yeah, Milwaukee's an hour and a half north of Chicago. So it's like, yeah, and Rockford's like a little bit, I don't know, I guess like northwest of it. So yeah, it's probably, I mean, I don't know, probably 40 minutes from Milwaukee. So yeah. Yeah, man. It not only like all the stuff we talked about, skating and family and all these like, generations of, like abuse or whatever. Like it also is like a great depiction of Midwest life, like Midwestern life. So incredible stuff. I love this movie to death. I love talking about sports documentaries, especially with you. You know your stuff just like I do. It's an absolute blast. Let's see. I think the next one of these, because this is my number 6, so we'd be going back to the beginning. The next one of these would be your number 5 is Parasite, which is Connor's number 3, I think. So we'll wait on that one. Doing it later, yeah.
Doing that one later. So we move to Connor's 5, which is Hereditary, which is also my number 5. So next week will be Hereditary. I'm sure Connor and I will be doing that one together as we both have it. Obviously, can't wait for that. Love that movie. A little bit of change of pace from Mind in the Gap, but
sure. Yeah, very.
That's
same
how
year, though, right?
That's how it should be. Say it again.
Same year though, right?
Yes, 2018. That's right. That might be the only year I repeated. Let me think. See, I did 2019 Waves, 2012 The Master, 2014 Whiplash, 2016 Moonlight.
I have a couple from 2015.
2010 Social Network. We both have.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have Sicario and Inside Out. Is that
yeah.
Yeah, I think 2018 might be the only one. Well, I have it right here. What am I doing? Oh no, I have Everybody Wants Some and Moonlight from 2016.
Okay.
So, yeah, man, this has been loads of fun. We're across the halfway point. We're getting close to kind of getting down to our like the nitty gritty of our list, which is super super exciting. I cannot wait to get to the end of that. Like just it'll be so rewarding to finally get to Social Network and Whiplash and like the ones that we have at the very top. I'm so stoked for that. But thank you guys for listening to this one. This is really special. Obviously a movie that's very important to us. If you like what we do, feel free to follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Filmgazm. For letterbox stuff, I'd suggest searching Connor95. He's the easiest one to look up because he's got look, my fucking username's like Austin, so really tough to find that one. There's a lot of us. Connor95, if you want to follow other people, myself, Adam, Jeremy's on there, Caleb, Josh. Most of the Filmgazm team is under Connor's followers. Check out filmgazm.com for trailers. You can listen to podcasts on there, read reviews, articles, and what have you. If you'd like to become a monthly donor to Filmgazm Productions, feel free to click on the link in the episode description. From there, click on Support This Podcast. Any amount of donations will go right back into the show. We appreciate any support you all can give. Thanks to the entire Filmgazm team for their contributions to the show, and a special thanks to Cooley Cal for our theme music. You're the man. And most of all, thank you all for listening. Keep watching movies, and we'll see you soon.